Hello. It's been a little while since the last update, but work has continued on the car. We're in a new location now. Finally have a little bit of space, and we'll just start on from the back and work our way forward. The transmission. So this is the old CD09, but we have a different adapter plate and bell housing. The plate has I think a T56 throwout bearing with the internal slave cylinder, and it's a little more compact than the original. You see the old bell housing. Well, you can't, but the old bell housing is quite a bit wider from here to here, which should work pretty well trying to fit inside the this section right here, as this can get fairly tight for a motor. And you may notice a slightly different motor. The 1UZ is gone now. I ran into too many problems with it, and I decided I would just rather start fresh. I've spent quite a bit of my time trying to make 1UZs work. So what we have here is a VVTi 2JZ. So this is the worst one with the thin rods. However, if you replace the rods, it's just as good as a regular 2JZ, and it fits in the bay nicely. What's really exciting about this is, let me open the hood here, I can show you. There we go. We now have a lot more room inside of here, inside the engine bay, where this is one of the larger weak points of the frame. So we can now run reinforcements from this area over to the front suspension, which I think most of the twist in the frame is coming in right here. So the original, not the original, but the Lotus 7 or Haynes manual designs for this frame want you to be running a bar from here to here. So we can finally do that. And on this side, there was only the lattice underneath, so we should be able to get quite a bit more reinforcement in here. The motor weighs, it's about the same weight as the 1UZ. It's not a big improvement. However, it should be much more reliable and easier to get running with turbos. Now, 1 second. There's that. All right. So we are now running a 2JZ. I think probably naturally aspirated to begin with, as I won't need the turbos, or I don't want to delay the project too much longer by tearing that motor apart and putting new rods in it and buying turbos and this and that. Naturally aspirated to get it going. Back here we have Porsche 928 tail lamps. I really wasn't sure what tail lamps were going to fit the design. I had some ideas originally, but changed the rear end around, and as you can see, I haven't gotten very far with that. We have those in place. Hopefully I can make those work, maybe a little bump out for a bumper and do something there. With the rear wheel arches, I really wasn't liking how the car looked from the rear. It's not a good spot for it, but it was just looking far too wide. The dimensions from how wide the rear track is versus how tall it is, and how low the fenders sit compared to how tall the roof is. The proportions looked really odd. So what I wanted to do is shorten the axle and move these in line with the front fenders. And so 2 inches have been taken out of each rear fender. I just used a laser level running along here and ran 2 lines 2 inches apart and cut it out. So these are tacked back on. There's quite a bit of rubbing in here, and so I'll need to do something about that. Perhaps a small panel that allows for some clearance, or just shortening the axle is probably what to be done. The doors are now latched. I'll show you on the other side how that's going. The body As you can see, not much has changed on the body. However, I have started welding it together and stripping the paint off of it. In the front here, this panel has been installed and made, along with this side was reshaped because it wasn't quite right. There's still a little bit of work to do in there. And I'll show you down here. You see this little beam coming out as part of the stand that holds the hinges sitting behind here. And they sit lower than the body does, so this is going to have to come out and form kind of a lip coming around just to hide those guys. So probably something like a splitter, not necessarily a splitter, but some little bump out right there is going to have to be formed. So with all the welding from this half of the hood is complete, which it turned out a lot better than I thought it would. I was kind of worried the panels just wouldn't line up or would get too warped. And you can see the way the light's reflecting off of it. These are still fairly rough panels. However, the movements in the panel are not very deep. It's very workable. This is what a section looks like after a little more attention with the grinding and then mostly the hammer and dolly. You can see these are misalignments where one panel is sitting higher than the other. So when you're grinding on it, you have to stop once you reach one side. Down here, that's how the top looked before getting much attention. That's just welding it and grinding it. And then as you're welding it, you're hammering it to make sure that you can get the panels very close. And these misalignments, this is one of the bad ones, are not very deep. That's probably a little over 1/16 of an inch difference. These are all minute, not something to worry about. In this case, this car, I was planning on having to bodywork the whole thing, so not a big deal. Here, this panel turned out pretty poor. That's to do with, this is a 22 gauge door skin off of a very cheap Chevy, and then this is 18 gauge, and this was rolled out, so it could be less than 22 at this point, and during all the welding and hammering it warped quite a bit. So still with some hammer and dolly, these will all come out to be much closer. These panels being overlapped when they were welded means that these are never going to line up properly, just because they sit the whole 18 gauge thickness higher than this panel. However, it still is looking pretty good, very workable. I was unclear if it would be. And then back here, this panel's been welded up all along here so that the window can go in place. I gotta cut a plexiglass window out. You can see the warping, mostly to do with this being a very flat panel with several feet of weld on both sides. This shouldn't be a big deal. This will come out with some studs, little weld on studs. Still gotta weld the roof. This right here is a tall point, so I'm gonna have to change how that channel is cut and re-welded so that we have a smooth transition over that instead of such a tight peak. Then coming down to here, the door handles, you might recognize that as a first-gen Miata. They all play well together. I just need to shorten the rods to make that work. So for now, you can see it's all Miata hardware down to the latch, because I wanted it to all work together pretty easily. So that is held in place by this panel. And to figure all this stuff out, I basically formed this panel first, set this on it as straight as I could, and then traced where it would put the latch in it and then traced where the latch needed to sit in order to have the door sitting in the right spot when it's closed, and then drill the holes and screw around with it to get the alignment right. And now, nice click. Obviously with door seals it's going to be a little harder, but that's fine. So, not a crazy amount of work has been done lately. However, I'm just getting back into the swing of things. There's quite a bit more room to work now, and I'm looking forward to getting the body squared away to this point where I just need to hammer and dolly it and bodywork it. There's still some work to do about making the door handles work, cutting the door handle for the other side, making the hood bulge, clasps for the hood, and reinforcements for the lower panels. Lots of little stuff to still do. However, I can still weld everything I've got right now and get the body in a much closer position. Because on this side, it looks somewhat hopeless. It's a bit hard to stay motivated. However, with a few days work, everything can look like that side and be much closer, where all you have to do is hammer and dolly. So overall, some work has been done, and I look forward to posting more videos. Thank you.